with New Wave Wellness Center. And the topic for this video is potassium. I'm going to show you 7 deficiency signs of potassium, and we'll show you how you can actually help correct these. So what exactly is potassium? Potassium is a mineral. It is what we call an electrolyte because it helps maintain the body's fluid or your electrolyte balance in the body. It also is wonderful for nerve function, with muscle cramps and those kind of things. So potassium has a lot of different things in the body. It supports a lot of different processes in the body. And now the other thing is 98% of Americans are deficient in potassium, or they're not getting the recommended daily intake of potassium that they say is needed for your body to be functioning the right way. So what happens with that is, well, I'm going to show you a few of these symptoms. And again, if you have some of these, you don't want to rush just straight away to start taking a potassium supplements. There's certain things you can do to help correct it all naturally again. So the first thing would be muscle cramps or fatigue, right? If you have muscle weakness and fatigue, this is something that is caused by the brain, because potassium is responsible for something in the body called the sodium potassium pump. Every muscle in your body has these little pumps where they open, they allow potassium to go in, your muscle will be able to contract, potassium leaves, and the muscle relaxes. When you don't have enough of these, what happens? You end up with a very weak contraction, so your muscles become weaker. Now the fatigue part is, potassium also helps with nutrient absorption in certain cells. So when you're not absorbing certain nutrients, what happens? You end up with all these fatigue problems, right? Now, leading from that, the second thing would be muscle cramping, right? So we know I've talked about magnesium in some of my other videos, where magnesium also causes muscle cramping, but potassium is the big one that's known for that. Same thing, potassium is required by the brain for relaying that message from the brain to the muscle to contract. If you're deficient in that, what happens? Yes, the muscle might contract, but it does not, because the potassium has to leave. Your muscle needs that potassium, so it stays in, and it stays in that prolonged contraction, which leads to more of what your muscle cramping stuff are. Third thing is your heart palpitations, right? If you've ever experienced, like if you go to bed or sometimes and you can actually hear your heartbeat in your head, well, that means you're deficient in potassium. Now, a palpitation is where it's like a rapid beat, or sometimes you end up with something called an arrhythmia, where you skip a bit, where you feel like your heart is just skipping a beat. Well, same thing, potassium is required. Your heart is a muscle. Potassium is required for some of those muscles to kind of help with the contraction and relaxation. When you're deficient, you can skip a beat. So watch out for that. Now, fourth thing would be digestive issues. Same, we are muscles all over our body. Your digestive system, the intestines, your stomach, everything is lined with muscles. Now again, as I just talked to you about, if you're deficient in potassium, what happens? Those muscles don't function as well. So any of the food you're eating can actually sit around, just kind of cause that whole gassy, bloaty feel, or it can even lead to constipation, because again, the food is not moving around the gut the way it should. So those are a few of the symptoms with that. Now, the fifth thing is tingling and numbness. Now, if you have prolonged tingling and numbness in your hands, fingers, your legs, this is something called paresthesia. Now, paresthesia has been caused again by a lack of potassium, because again, nerves, for them to function, and then again, the nerves on the very tip of your fingertips and everywhere are very sensitive. So that's one of the big reasons why you feel it on your fingertips and your toe tips, is because they're sensitive. So the first time you have a deficiency in potassium, you'll start noticing a bit of that tingly feel. So that's not a good sign. Other thing, number 6 would be brain fog, mood changes and brain fog. A lot of people, I have in my office that complain about this whole brain fog deal. Did you know the adrenals actually take up a lot of potassium? When your body's under any kind of stress, you use a lot of potassium. Your adrenals will use a lot of potassium. So when you're deficient in potassium, again, that signaling with the neurotransmitters in your brain kind of gets deficient. You're slowed down in that, so you end up with brain fog, where you're thinking of something and suddenly you're like, what was I talking about again? So that, if that's one of your symptoms, that could be a deficiency in potassium also. Now, blood sugar levels. Number 7 is blood sugar levels. If you have high blood sugar levels, it is another sign that you might be deficient in potassium, because potassium actually helps make insulin in our bodies. So it's one of those things that are precursors. It helps absorb nutrients. It also creates some of those things where it helps in production of certain hormones, and insulin is one of them. So if you have high blood sugar levels, you may be a little deficient in potassium. So now, if you are deficient in all these, how do you fix it? Well, the big thing is, again, how do you become deficient in potassium? First thing I mentioned is, yes, you could not be having a right amount of intake in your diet. But the second big thing is a lot of people that are taking medications, your diuretics, blood pressure medications. These things are known to leach out potassium from our bodies. So yes, those calcium channel blockers will block calcium and certain things which help regulate your fluid in your body and help stabilize your blood pressure, but they actually cause a potassium deficiency. Now, potassium again is going to help with muscle contractions, right? So when you're low in that, what's going to happen? Well, your blood pressure is still not going to regulate. So you do want to take some potassium if you're on a blood pressure medication. Now, if you also have excessive sweating, because when you sweat, you actually lose a lot of salts. We're losing your sodium, potassium, things that way. So that's one of the big reasons why athletes are always asked to drink electrolytes, right? Electrolytes are that whole electrical signaling between the muscles and the brain. So if you don't have enough of that, you end up with a cramping or a cramp in your muscles. You don't want that, take potassium. Now, how should you take potassium, or how much potassium should you be taking? The recommended allowance or the recommended intake for a day is 4,700 milligrams. 4,700 milligrams a day. That's quite a bit, because when you come to think of it, a banana contains only about 420 milligrams of potassium. So you might have to take about 10 bananas a day just to be able to get enough potassium. So there's other things. Now, when you eat green leafy vegetables, your salads, your spinach, anything dark green leafy veggies contain a lot of potassium in it. Now, the other thing is avocados. Avocados are getting a lot of popularity as a superfood because, again, they contain a lot of potassium. They have about 680 milligrams of potassium, depending on the size, per avocado. So that's wonderful. Now, when we talk about electrolytes, we talked about how athletes are drinking a lot of these Gatorades and all that to replenish some of the electrolytes. Well, the best natural electrolyte or electrolyte replenisher is coconut water. Coconut water contains about 1 cup of coconut water contains 600 milligrams of potassium in it. Well, not to mention some of the other minerals that are found in coconut water too. So again, if you are feeling any of these deficiency symptoms, don't reach for any supplementing. Sometimes supplementing can actually cause other issues. When you take too much potassium also, it's not a good thing. You might actually end up with heart arrhythmias and things that way. So you don't want to consume too much potassium. And I think most of the supplements that you find are regulated, and they're only about 99 to 100 milligrams per pill. So you might have to take way too many of those. So instead of doing that, I definitely recommend just changing your diet. Eat a little bit healthier, some more greens. The same thing. So if you cannot eat, big 10 servings of salad every day, which again, it's kind of hard for me to do as well. That's one of the reasons why I do my green smoothie. So if you haven't watched my green smoothie recipe, watch that, because I actually add a lot of the greens in there, but I also add a super green, one of those powders, which are concentrated and have a ton of the other potassium, other minerals that your body requires in them. So make a shake, drink it. And that's one way to kind of replenish some of this potassium in your body. So again, if you know anybody that's suffering from any of these kind of symptoms or any of these signs that we just talked about, please share this video with them. Let them know that there could be other things that can help correct these. So potassium is a big mineral that's required by the body. I hope that information helps you, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.